And we are live.
I promise I'd wait for called back to order at 9:11 a.m. One item of housekeeping, just to alert everybody, check out at 11 a.m. Check it out. Proceeding with the agenda, our next item is new business with previous notice. The first item is restructuring COC ballot access IF. Mr. Hall, 10 minutes.
So we're not great in line. So most of you should have seen in email where I sent around a proposal. It was written as a policy manual change with no bylaw here. That's how I rate things. But the core of what I'm suggesting, a number of states have adopted what's known at the state level as the director model. Instead of having everything done by committees, there's a division, and committees are reserved more for deliberation and strategy and making decisions about direction, whereas the director actually executes tasks. And I've been on a number of committees, subcommittees of this body through the years. There are a number of committees that I think are more geared toward action rather than geared towards deliberation and just setting direction. There are a couple of committees that are probably hybrid of that. COC and ballot access are probably really good examples of committees that both try to make decisions and direction, and then also are tasked with doing it. The upside of the director model, as we have seen it implemented in various states, and Kentucky just recently adopted this about 3 years ago, actually slowed the game. The upside is that there is actually more freedom to execute the task, but also more accountability and leadership. So it's still balanced, which is really nice, but it gives the people the ability to do the things they've been tasked to do, and then also have direct accountability, whether that's, and I've seen it several different ways, either directly to the chair, directly to the body, sometimes there's some other manager. It's not necessarily indifferent from what we do for our staff, right? We have an executive director, and then there are people that report up to the executive director. And in fact, that same model works for the director model. So say someone becomes director or something, they're able to appoint and add more people underneath of them and have them assist in the task. The difference between what we do with staff and what I put out is that this would be volunteers. Unfortunately, we do not have 8-figure bank accounts or 9-figure bank accounts for this party. And as such, a lot relies on volunteers. And so the goal of this, the goal is to set up a quasi-structure in lieu of having employees, in lieu of having staff, because it would make no sense for there to be 2 people trying to execute the same task. So ideally, you would start with volunteers, until such time as there was funding available to make it an actual staff position. That's kind of the balance of how that would actually functionally work. Again, I do think that there are 3 committees in particular. What is now the IS committee, COC, and ballot access, are things that I have been on, and would say that there is that hybrid type role. And I think that splitting those apart would actually make us better, because you would have the person in charge of executing with the more power to actually execute with this body, ideally having stronger control. So instead of having a motion to rescind something previously done or remove someone from a committee, it would just be a motion to fire someone, which you can't fire volunteers. So that is the basis of the proposal. I don't know that if there's necessarily a need for a motion today. I really just want to get the conversation started. I know there's always reluctance to put a new model in, especially the director model, but it's really worked well for us in Kentucky and other states.
Could you resend that email for a second?
Yeah.
Buried somewhere here. There it is. There it is. Oh, I swear I had looked at this somewhere. Send it. Here. Nothing. Let's go to the list. Oh, yeah. So that should be going to the business list ranking. So, again, it's not necessarily we need to act today. I'm looking at the conversation started. I never really believed in the director model. Kentucky was very slow to adopt it. Brought it up 3 years ago, while other states have been doing it for over a decade. It's worked very well for us, specifically in IT, which I guess I conflict of interest. I am the IT director for Kentucky, but it is nice to be able to just do the thing and report back to the XCOM. Here's all the things I'm doing, and then have them ask me to do things, and I just do the things. And not having to go, resetting someone's email password doesn't require a meeting, right? It's just do the thing. So I'm open to other questions if anybody has any. Otherwise, like I said, I just really wanted to get a conversation started more than anything.
Mr. Danner, are you ready?
Well, thinking about making a motion, but I don't know how that would be received by the body at this point. This is pretty fresh.
I would say, well, I'll leave it to you. I think language is being perfected. I don't think it'll happen today. So that's just my
I think you're right, so I will withhold that.
sorry.
I had a question for Mr. Walnut.
Ms. Harlan.
Yeah, Mr. Walnut. I'm a bit confused only in that I love the director model when we use it in Colorado, but it almost seems to be doing exactly opposite than you said. That's where I got confused. On ours, the committees do the work, and the director supervises and reports back to the board. And that, because the idea was that, that one person can't do everything.
Right.
They're there to make sure they get volunteers to make sure it gets done, and then if the volunteers don't do it, then and so it seems like opposite from what you said, and that just really confused me.
I'd have to, and I'm not familiar with how Colorado specifically is structured. But based on, I mean, so this is not a new proposal, by the way. This was proposed to the LNC back in 12 or 14, somewhere back then, maybe 10, I don't remember. And this body did not take it in at that time, but other states adopted the model in the meantime. Certainly every state ends up adopting their own flavor of things based on the conditions on the ground and what works best for their membership. But the goal of this anyway is specifically to make sure that there's one person in charge of making sure that it's set and things get done, directly accountable to the main parent body, but without having to go through Robert's Rules of Order. And that's really what that is, right? Committees are built around Robert's Rules of Order. We've got this 921-page book on, how committees operate that we don't need for someone to go when they're changing someone's email password or something like that.
Can I ask a follow-up, Mr. Chair?
We did that. Is that,
Mr. Mullen, I'm just now reading that, many of us, maybe the first time we're seeing it. I know that they was a new proposal, this proposal to this element of the CA.
Yes.
Many freshman members, and I think trying to take this further discussion and take action. Without getting everyone an appropriate amount of time, even though it's probably appropriate, as I'm reading it as well. While I get where you're going, and I get where you're going, but I think we got other they're very working on this. I think trying to move on this, even though they take the conversation, it's going to put us in cross purposes. The work that's already being done by other people on that in the past. This is something we revisit at a later time.
Absolutely, and that, as I noted, I'm not looking for a motion today. I mean, if the committee wanted to, it's obviously the committee's prerogative, but my main thing is to get the conversation started, making sure we're thinking about, and this falls into the broader picture of, can we do things more efficiently? Can we do things better, rather than saying, this is the way we've always done it? Is there a better way? And in the end, maybe the director model isn't the right way, which, if it isn't, cool, but at least I hope I inspire some thought behind, should we do it better?
I'm on the side of it, it's fine.
Talk to him outside.
Yeah, more than happy to talk to anybody about anything like that, so. Thank you.
And then Dan, are we moving the microphone up? Okay. Next item is CRM, that we did yesterday. So the next item is social media and parameters for messaging and telephone. 20 minutes.
So, am I supposed to go there?
Do whatever you
All right, my back is killing me, I can't see. Well, I don't have a motion, though I wouldn't be sad if someone else did. But I do think we need to, like we did last term or the term before, talk about what our strategy is with social media. It seems very, very scattergun, and every 6 months we have some kind of meltdown that goes on. So I can tell you my particular thoughts are that I actually think LNC members or staff or a combination of both should be the ones that become convinced, and that wasn't my position a couple years ago, handling with social media. We had something happen in Colorado which was similar, where a volunteer had said something to the equivalent of kill all cops. It was a little bit more subtle. And we had a big PR thing where we had to go on the news and talk about it. The social media is the party's voice. That is pretty serious, unless we're going to come up with a policy where volunteers sign their posts and it distances, and it assigns it to a specific person. But I think we decided in the past that there was too much abuse on volunteers. But I don't think what we're doing is working. And I don't think it's been working since we got rid of that really tight volunteer team after the saving post or whatever it was, which was actually a more understandable mistake because, I didn't explain how that happened, but it's a long time ago. But I don't think we have a good strategy on that. And I just wanted to get the conversation going. So I'll leave this area and be a participant again.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Ms. Allen?
So I agree with you that our social media is problematic. I think it's wonderful that our chair has created these advisory committees and maybe targeted ones on marketing and media, and maybe this is something that advisory committee can take out, discuss, and come back to us with a report on. Maybe it be help steer us as an LNC in a direction that we Mr. Robbins is the chair of that. I have to vote.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Mr. Lucchini?
Yeah, we've had similar issues with our Facebook page for Twitter. One of the things that we have put into place, and I wish there was a technological way to support this, is no one person ever makes a post. There's always two people involved, because somebody's impulse at one point tends to be moderated by another voice. I don't know if this is a policy thing, a technology thing, but I do believe that any communications with social media should be done in-house, probably LNC and staff. But if there was a way to facilitate auto moderation of these things, right? At least two people on the LNC that agree that you should send this out. I think that solves almost all the problems.
Thank you, Mr. Lucchini. Mr. Nair?
Yeah, this is actually unrelated to the current controversy, but maybe become a controversy in the future. Somebody has made a account on Parler that is called LP National. They're using our branding as their picture. Their name just appears as Libertarian Party, and they're posting some pretty inflammatory stuff on there. I'm not on Parler, but people from the region are sending me screenshots. So I don't know if that's something we want to talk about or address, but you know, if they do gain a large following on there using our official stuff, it's not cool.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, could you repeat what social media platform that was on? Harvard, thank you.
Ms. Helen?
Just one thing to add, that I should have said when I was up there. What I think keeps happening with our social media is there's a lot of politics played with it. I know we're a political party, so obviously we're going to do politics, but I mean internal politics. Who's on the page depends upon who's in favor at the time, and it seems very factional. And I think it's whoever is most qualified needs to be on there, even if most people don't like that person, if they're doing a good job. And I think we have a lot of people who really know what they're doing for social media. I'm just going to give myself as an example. I was running the national page when a bunch of people disappeared for almost like a year and a half and doing all of the posts. But in Colorado, I was running the page. I do social media training for affiliates when they have emergencies like what happened in Colorado. So I would, if we go a different direction, volunteer my time once again. But I think whoever it is needs to be people who have a proven track record, and particularly perhaps social media trainers on how to do this, and not by, you know, who's friends with who.
Ms. Sarver?
I have a comment and a question. Comment is, if you see something that is controversial, don't screenshot it and then tell everybody to look at it, you know, make a huge outrage, because it was deleted and we're still getting complaints. So my question is to Chair, we got probably 6 complaints. Did you happen to look and see if any of them or all of them were dues paying numbers? Is that correct?
Yeah. Sorry, one second. I got it.
The people who were sending comments and with their outrage, were all of them or any of them dues paying numbers?
A couple, most not. Ms. Evans? No.
Thanks. So, I'm new with the LNC, obviously, and I don't have the full scope of all of the past controversies. But I think there's a couple of things to consider here. First of all, I would be concerned with having LNC members responsible for posting on a regular basis, just because one of us does, I don't speak for the whole LNC, nobody speaks for the whole LNC, so I think we need to be a little careful because there's less accountability other than, shaming each other. And then I think the other thing that we need to look at, and this is sort of related, is the question of the mass emails that we get in the forms. How do we respond to those? And if there's a norm or a long-standing tradition of, the secretary responding, that's fine. I think that we don't need to have, 10 of us responding in different ways to the same person. So I think we need to develop some structure on those things as well. And I would suggest, with respect to social media, maybe we find a staff member who can do the normal stuff at the direction of the chair and the executive director.
Ms. Adams?
So, beating a dead horse, we have an APRC. It is their job to review publications and communications. They're a natural fit for this. We're trying to reinvent a wheel and build a system where one already exists. For a while, the APRC was involved in our social media, and then we brought on somebody else to handle social media who completely cut them out. Putting them back into the process is going to eliminate a lot of this. The chair has created an advisory committee to also deal with this. I don't know why we want to continue to belabor something that we already have a solution for it, we just failed to use. Let's just use the solution that we already have and move on to the next order of business. We have a lot of work to do this cycle.
Mr. Mullen?
I just want to note that when it came to complaints, there were a lot, and there were definitely numbers. I actually had from a lot of the state parties in Region 3, because I know those guys in the past, obviously. But most of the complaints were coming from people that were actually holding titles in county or state leadership. And so, while certainly I agree with the sentence that Starr said, please don't screenshot stuff and send it around and post it all over. That's like the opposite of the right thing to do. That is literally like, hey, look how bad we were. Let's tell the whole world that somebody did something bad and do something horrible for the party in the meantime. It was a mistake. It got corrected. And had the screenshots not existed, it probably would have been like corrected, right? So certainly other people can screenshot us. We're going to make mistakes from time to time, but don't make it worse by like showing everyone in the whole world where a boo-boo is made. So,
Mr. Dan?
I think, I don't know that we're going to make any real decisions today, so I'm going to request that we table this to the next online meeting.
There's one more person on the speakers list. If you would mind just letting them know as we go this. Ms. Bill, you. Oh, two more. Sorry.
No, I do.
Okay. Just Mr. London.
So one of the things I would like for us to look at is actually getting a professional that is a marketing professional with social media experience, because the problem is we're all kind of knee deep in this. Somebody who can take a step back. So I think that's where
That's the first time we got into the problem.
But I'm sorry, there are some people that are libertarian affiliated that I think would be very good at this, that we should be looking at this. So.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Bill.
Yes, thank you. That actually was what created the most recent set of problems we've had with social media. We had a really good system when one of our staff members was responsible for it. A really good system after we had to make some corrections. And then someone was hired specifically to do social media, and that person refused to allow APRC to have any oversight at all or even access. And they were not directed to do so. So there would have to be some serious changes in that aspect, because just because someone gets paid to do that thing only doesn't mean they get to cut out the actual body body responsible for it. So we have to be very careful with that. But we had a system in place before. I don't know, Karen, you might disagree, but I thought it worked well when we had scheduled times that we could review things. We were allowed in there to design, phase of things, and we're hands off, just kind of looking, if anything was a red flag, we would go in there and do whatever needed to be done, but I think it worked really, really well there. Why that changed, I don't know, but I just wanted to respond to Mr. Valenti's suggestion that we try that.
Q is clear. So. There's something. Mr. Gale.
Can I think of a large part of our social media strategy is a lack of strategy. I think that a lot of our social media.
He's got to go to second.
I think a large part of our social media mishaps is a lack of strategy. And I think that a lot of times we post things or have certain campaigns with a lack of an overall goal. How's it going to affect the party? What are we trying to accomplish? I remember a couple of years ago during Easter Day when we were speaking out for religious freedom, which doesn't seem to be a big hot button issue right now in the United States, that we didn't have to make that content because it's not a part of an overarching goal. So I think a large part of our social media restructuring or forming is to actually have a plan and a strategy to find out what are we trying to do? Are we trying to convert new members? Are we trying to fundraise? Are we trying to just generate original content? Are we trying to stir our base and decide what we want to do, prioritize that, grow our social media presence, grow our reach, organic, and all that kind of stuff, but have that healthy content out there. I think if we start to do that, we're really go down the right path for social media, and then we can try to figure out what we want to do. Right now, it's just way too moving.
Mr. Lee.
I think Ms. Adams has this right. I think this really is, even though it's electronic communication, it falls under the review. What the exact structure of that review should be. It falls in line with my previous suggestion. I don't know if this is the appropriate venue to make a motion, but I think we should just do this. It's just put the control or the oversight back in the hands of that committee and be done with this whole thing. I just like getting a sense of the body. I think that's great.
Now I'm going to request we table one, and I don't care if anybody's in the queue.
Mr. Dana moves to table this until the next electronic meeting.
Whenever we meet.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Moulton. Is there any objection? Without objection. Next item is status of affiliate support, candidate support, membership support committees. Mr. Phillips.
It's simple. We've got these committees that we haven't filled yet. I know we purposely put off ballot access until we achieve ballot access because it wasn't much change. But I think that we need to start the process and direct the collection of applications to fill these committees. I know that we're looking at maybe restructuring some of them, but we haven't done that yet. And some of these committees, particularly right now, candidate support, are particularly important walking into election season. That's going gangbusters right now, and then a lot of states have municipal elections coming in the spring. So I think that those could be, I just think that we need to do it for these committees.
Move to open the floor for nominations for the candidate support committee for the 5 LNC members.
Motion has been made to open nominations for the candidate support committee. Mr. Legini. I'd like to self-nominate. All right, Mr. Legini.
I'll second.
Mr. Nikhil.
like to nominate David Sexton.
Sexton. Mr. Phillips.
I'd like to self-nominate this committee.
Mr. Renzo.
Seeing that one of the chair's advisory committees are candidates and elected officials, I would be interested to see the interest of the individuals on this list who are being part of this committee.
Let's go down. Mr. Coburn. Go. Mr. Buckman.
He is not here, but he has indicated he would like to sell a ballot access.
Ms. Epke. Mr. Hall. Mr. Hewitt. Candidate support. Sure. Yes. Mr. Phillips, we already did. Mr. Sexton, we already did. That takes us up to 7. Yep, I'm treating all those.
Could you please read some names?
Sure. I have Genie, Sexton, Phillips, Coburn, FG, Hall, Hewitt. You're overslot. I think we're overslot. Any further nominations? Chair will entertain a motion to close nominations. So moved. Is there any objection to closing nominations? Nominations are closed.
Mr. Chair, can I move that we have an online ballot? On these candidates?
Ms. Hogarth moves to conduct an online ballot to select the members. Then seconded by Mr. Phillips. Is there objection?
I'm not objecting, but how many can get out?
Is it 5, Richard?
According to the policy manual, it's 5 LNC members, 2 non-LNC members that that the chair appoints based on recommendations from the 5 LNC members that are chosen. We chose 5 amongst
So
those.
we have those for the 5.
It's not Mr. Chair.
All right, hang on. We're in the middle. Any objection? Without objection.
Are you instructing me to start a ballot when we're all back in town?
Yeah, because I found everybody. All right. Mr. Phillips, still your time. All right, is that up?
Mr. Chair, the LSLA is granting our 3 members of the municipal committee.
Mr. Chair, to build on what Ms. Adams just shared from the LSLA, according to our policy manual, in order to populate the affiliate support committee, you must name a chair for the affiliate support committee. And then that chair will then appoint 3 LSC regional reps to match the 3 that LSLA provides. So I would ask, can you name that chair now?
Shall spend a minute. Do you have the names of the LSLA?
I do. The LSLA names Ken Bowman, David Demarest, and Pat Ford to the affiliate support committee.
The chair would appreciate a 5-minute recess to fulfill the request.
I move to have a 5-minute recess.
We are recessed until, Mr. Longstaff moves for recess. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Lucchini. Is there objection? We are recessed till 9:49. Would you like me to stop and restart the live stream?
No, 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 that's not. He's looking at wireless ones. But it's just like my close to hands. This one. Richard, you have it was only well, this one's like, that's why I should do this one. Hey, Dan. Can you show me about expenses? They do get 18 wireless mics, and then, so I just put the example on my transmission board. So we had 18 wireless, 2 traditional style, we have one recording, and this is the audience. I look at you running around, and I was jumping through this, it's awesome. Oh, easier. It's just get off the wire.
I don't know.
No.
So, just like snap. Everybody's here. As long as ACS is already right, it's doing that. So then, screen.
Yeah, the main thing is having the main thing is to push the talk. That's the main thing. It has to be pushed to talk so that people are doing that. I just said something now on a live line. Or topic, or at least I don't know that. I just had what's in on this too. What's that? Oh yeah.
We just.
The chair appoints Ms. Sauer as chair of the affiliate support committee and names Mr. Phillips, Mr. Wentz, and Mr. Valente as three regional members. We have 3 minutes left on the time.
Chair, if you could, I've been to a lot of rock concerts in my life and stuff. If you could use the microphone a little bit more, you're doing great on everything else, but.
The point is, the point is well taken, so nobody else repeat that. Chair appoints Ms. Sauer as chair of the affiliate support committee and names Mr. Phillips, Mr. Wentz, and Mr. Valente as the members. There's 3 minutes left on this item. Phillips has stepped out of the room, but I think Mr. Longstreth, you were looking up about membership support.
So yes, Mr. Phillips had on page 1 to also discuss the membership support committee. However, that was a ad hoc, one-term only committee. It is not in our policy manual. And I am going to go ahead and say that this item is all wrapped up from Mr. Phillips' perspective, and he had a slight misunderstanding.
All right. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this agenda? Seeing none, we are done with it. Next item, Ms. Carlos, you ready for your 6 items in a row?
I what, my 6 items in a row? Yes, I am. I've been quiet.
Well,
Okay.
take it away.
What's the first one I'm pulling up?
I have a style changes to bylaws.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I'll go with it. I'm sorry? No, well, no, that's the second one.
Okay, earlier in the week, I had sent over, well, I had them separately, so I think bylaws was the first.
Bylaws and platforms.
Okay. I sent over some potential style changes for the bylaws and platform. Our bylaws allow us to make non-substantive changes to ensure consistency and compliance with the Chicago Manual of Style, which is our official style guide. I had started this last term, and we went through, and Mr. Hagan had assisted with the policy manual, getting that in line with our style guide. So this term, I wanted to take on the platform, which only, I think, had 1 or 2 changes, and the bylaws, which had quite a bit. They had been changed so many times over the years by different people with different voices that there was a lot of inconsistency in grammar, and some abbreviations were used and not defined, and that sort of thing. So I did send them over and received some feedback and changed a couple things and sent the revised versions. Mr. Hagan had made a couple suggestions with the numbers, and I looked up that appropriate rule in Chicago Manual and were correct on that. So I would like to move to adopt the style changes that I proposed to both the bylaws and the platforms.
Second. I'm microphone, sorry.
I've done so.
Ms. Harlow moves to adopt the changes which are in the one note as, it's 2 separate items actually. It's bylaws and convention rules style changes proposed. It looks like there's 30 odd changes there, and then platform style changes, which are 4 changes. And there was a second from Mr. Routset. Is there objection? Saying none, without objection. Next item, RO and R related policy review changes. Ms. Harlow's 20 minutes.
Don't take this.
So along those lines, I don't know how many people read the policy manual for their morning devotions as the way I do, but there was a lot, maybe 5 years ago, a complete revamp of the policy manual, and Ms. Matson had very thoroughly went through and footnoted the policy manual for the relevant rules of Roberts that were either being superseded by our policy manual or just general support for it. But we all know, well, hopefully we all know that as of September 1st, the 12th edition of Roberts is out. And the biggest change in it was a massive restructuring on how you cite to the book and moved a bunch of stuff around. So the citations that Ms. Matson had put in are now out of date. So that's the only changes, was me pecking through the book to find where it was at now and to cite to the most current edition, which is now what we're using. So there's no substantive changes, it's just updating the references. So I would like to move to permit the secretary to update the Roberts Rules of References order in the notations in the endnotes of the policy manual.
Where's the mic? Ms. Harlow moves to adopt the changes that are listed as policy manual changes due to ROR change. And I think these are exclusively updating references from the 11th edition to the 12th edition. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it was seconded by Mr. Longstreth. Is there objection? Without objection. Next item. Policies and Procedures Committee proposal, Ms. Harlow's 15 minutes. Do you consider that as mooted or do you want?
Yeah, because I told you what I had thought and
Yeah.
what your form, your things moved.
Yeah, all right. Is there any objection to dispensing with this item? Without objection. Next item, police assistant treasurer on website question. Ms. Harlow's 5.
Yeah, I had asked a question to Mr. Fishman, and he had said it's probably better referred to the LNC. There is an official role of assistant treasurer, but they've never been listed on the website, and it is an FEC requirement, and it is a bylaws position, so I do think that they need to be listed on the website and actually have an lp.org email address. The question was where on the website, and I had some discussions outside this meeting, so here's the motion I would like to make, is that the assistant treasurer be listed on the subcommittee page as assistant treasurer with, and be assigned an lp.org email address. It has like the APRC.
Second. Ms. Harlow has made a motion. She's just. Thank you for running. Ms. Harlow made a motion. Mr. Longstreth has seconded it. Is there objection? Okay. If it's related to this, you should object. I'm not going to end the item after this. We can keep discussing assistant treasurer stuff. Okay, so without objection, we will continue discussion on this item because I think there's some ancillary issues. Mr. Hagan and then Mr. Lucci.
Yeah, when Specialist Pecton, our assistant treasurer, was reviewing his job duties, it's not described anywhere. The bylaws mentions assistant treasurer twice, basically saying we need to have assistant treasurer. And the other point is they cannot be on the audit committee, and it's not mentioned anywhere in the policy manual. So I'd like a little discussion to get some feedback on what we see the duties of the assistant treasurer is, other than being available to sign the FEC reports if the treasurer is not available. So I can write up something to add to the policy manual if we need to add a paragraph in a future meeting of what the duties of the assistant treasurer are. So just want some feedback from the rest of the LNC on that.
Mr. Lucchini and then Mr. Longstreth. Mr. Lucchini.
You more or less stole my thunder because that's pretty much the same observation I had, which is during any duties assigned. So I think this should certainly, since it's bylaws, it has to go on the agenda for the next convention. I think you can certainly operate under the assumption that the assistant treasurer does whatever you tell them to do. Because that's just normally what the work assistant means. So I'm not sure that we have to get into a lot of discussion right now, but I do think this should be clarified next time with the convention.
Mr. Longstreth?
So my thoughts, Tim, would be that, that the role of the assistant treasurer should essentially be treasurer in training, just in case something actually happens to you. He or she is not left in a situation where all they know what to do is to sign forms. That the assistant treasurer would be as intimately involved in every aspect of the treasurer role as you are, in running those ropes. That way, if you decide you don't want to do this again after, your 20th term, we got something ready to go. And that would be my thought, and what I envision when I hear assistant treasurer, and I think that is somewhat of the LNC intent by saying that there's another person who can sign the forms. I think the intent all the way around is that this person could step into your role if an emergency would happen 100% and keep the ball going. So I would suggest training Mr. Baton everything you do. That'd be my suggestion.
Exactly what Mr. Longstreth said.
Matt, anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Mr. Hewitt?
Yeah, and it does include even, for trash any reports or anything like that, be in contact with closely, get that second opinion before it comes out to us. And they're in part of the process too, so I agree with everything he said.
Mr. Phillips?
Just make sure you teach him his job to find here.
Without objection, Mrs. Sisto, staff.
I just want to mention that there is tremendous fundraising potential to training treasurers around the country to work campaigns. And I think that would be a valuable resource to have an assistant treasurer be participating in. Once candidates are done with their election, they can do two things with the money that they raise, and that is give it to another candidate or give it to their party. And so it would be very, very helpful if that could be something.
Funny you should mention that. I have directed Mr. Pepitone and Ms. Schultz to work together on preparing an action plan for that.
Mr. Burrow? Time on this item is expired.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I would move to extend for the one extra item we had on assistant treasurer. The conforming change to the policy manual regarding the audit committee that the assistant treasurer cannot sit on the.
Do you have language?
I was just going to add the word assistant treasurer after where it says officers can't. It's just a conforming change.
Is there objection to considering this item to add assistant treasurer to the list of people ineligible for the non-LNC members of the audit committee?
For the
which would
yes.
conform, it would be redundant to the bylaws, right? Bylaws.
Right, it would conform to the bylaws, but we do that multiple times in the policy manual.
Okay. Is there objection to consideration of that? Without objection.
All right, so I have a simple motion. I don't have the language in front of me because it's really quite simple, just to make a conforming change where in the chart in the policy manual where it says who can be on the audit committee, just to add where it says however many non-LNC members of, but with the exception of the assistant treasurer, and footnote it to reference the bylaws. That's my motion.
Second. All right, Ms. Carlos makes that motion, which is, sorry, I just want to table. So on page, yeah, there it is. Section 1.03 of the policy manual under audit committee, where it says very clearly one non-officer LNC member and two non-LNC members. It doesn't say treasurer.
I was going to put with the exception of the assistant treasurer. Because they're a non-LNC member. But
I think you gotta have this in writing.
Okay, I'll do it by email now.
We'll do that. Because I think that this may need
Okay, no problem.
more clarity than what we're assuming. All right. So time on that item is expired. Next item,
adopt porcupine as official mascot. Ms. Farlow's.
Alrighty, this came up in the second, the second sitting of the convention, primarily by Mr. Sheets, but there was also several other members, and this has come up over the years. And I did send over some language because I thought I differ a little bit from what the members were proposing at convention, because we do have an official logo. It's the chicken, whether we like it or not. And the Statue of Liberty is also acceptable, it says in our policy manual, for any other things. But my idea is, you know, I'm envisioning us being on news, you know, and counties and states being turned yellow. And we do know that when the news cover, we have the yellow, right, like the red and the blue for the, you know, the also brands. We need to position ourselves to fit right in for proper news coverage. And they always stick up that donkey and that elephant. And I think for that use case, the porcupine is perfect for us because we need to be ready to be shown on TV as winners. And you know, that chicken is just so entirely different. I don't think it fits. But the porcupine, there's already plenty of designs with proper colors. And I want us to be ready to be winners with that and to have our animal as well. So I don't have the language right in front of me, but I put it in the policy manual, and that's the motion I'm making. I can go to my desk and read it, unless the chair would like to.
May I ask you a question?
Well, I need to make a motion, I guess, first.
Which of these?
Yes, okay, add right where it says graphical. So the policy manual section 2.062 currently says the graphic symbols and colors and the Statue of Liberty graphic and the Torch Eagle graphic, otherwise known as the chicken, which that doesn't say, but I say it, are considered the appropriate graphic symbols to be used on party materials. Yellow, black, and gray are the appropriate primary colors to be used on primary materials. And I'm moving to add the porcupine can be used in settings where it is typical for a graphical animal to be used, such as in election coverages and races with the Democrats and Republicans, in which the donkey and elephant are used for their representations.
Ms. Farlow moves that language to be added to the policy manual. Is there a second?
I'll wait a second.
Second by Mr. Longstreth. Is there objection?
You mean just making it so? Yeah.
Mr. Ullman objects, so we'll move into discussion and debate. Oh my gosh, all right. All right, so here's how we're gonna do this. I'm gonna let Ms. Farlow speak further of motion if she wishes. Mr. Ullman objected, so I'm gonna give him some time. I'm gonna go around on this. You got a substitute, so we'll get to you. In order to alternate, if you could do thumbs up to speak in favor of the motion, thumbs down to speak against, thumbs sideways to do anything else. So, we will proceed. Ms. Marlis, did you want to speak any further with your motion?
No, I did on email, I reserve the right to speak later.
All right.
But I want to be, I know what the substitute is, and I want to be on the list to speak in opposition.
All right. Mr. Mullen.
Okay. I guess my main thing with all this, the animals that the Democrats and Republicans have were assigned by the media. They just have occurred. They're generally accepted. As far as I'm aware, they have no copyright or patent on their particular animals. I worry that if we start codifying our animals, then we're going to have to start like enforcing IP stuff. And, you know, we already have the issue right now with somebody using on social media, some alternate platform in our name. If we add yet another animal, then it's like, well, now everybody with this animal is, you know, are speaking for the party too. I think I understand that. I have very good friends that are for this. I just think we're better off leaving it alone. That if in the instance we pull off a presidential race or a congressional race in the national media, we'll find whatever animal they decide to assign to us, and it doesn't matter what's in our policy manual. I just hope whatever they choose is appropriate. And so rather than creating some sort of new IP nightmare, I think we're good where we're at. Everybody knows, in our circles, we know what the porcupine is. So that's all.
Ms. Hogarth.
Yes, I'm speaking, I want to be clear, I'm speaking in the name of one of my constituents from Region 5. When I offer a substitute motion for, in essence, the same, but for the American bison, which is a magnificent animal, very representative of libertarian values.
That's the motion.
Yes,
All right.
what substitute?
Ms. Hogarth moves to substitute, to strike porcupine and insert American bison. Is that correct? Is there a second?
Would that not be right with the substitute motion?
Well, I guess I would amend or,
Substitute motions are perfected separately.
Well, I'll leave it to the maker of the motion.
amend.
Those of you. All right. Ms. Hogarth moves to amend, to strike the word porcupine and insert the two words American bison. Is there a second? Is that what you seconded? Is there a second? Dies Galar, the second. All right. Ms. Hogarth, did you have anything further? No. Okay. Mr. McKay.
Around 2002, there was a group of executives that sat around a room much like this at the offices of Warner Brothers, trying to figure out how they would fight IP laws in Napster. Obviously, time will tell, they weren't very successful. We had the same argument here years ago when discussing IP laws back in the day regarding the Libertarian Party, and the argument was, are we selective in our approach to IP laws, or are we going to take the shotgun approach and try to go against everything that might be infringing on our IP? I trust the wisdom of this board well enough to take the sniper approach to when and what cases it is appropriate to go after IP. I think that the porcupine personally is indicative of LP branding, whether it's official or not, and I think that officially adapting that logo, adopting it to our party, our imagery, our branding is a step in the right direction. Whether or not we adopt it, it's already adopted us. I think this is just officializing that animal to our party. So I definitely support it and invite you all to this.
Mr. Nana. Yeah, my point actually kind of ties into what you said, but it's the reason why I kind of don't support it. Right now, the porcupine is not our official. We don't say it's our official logo, so if anybody does something crazy with the porcupine, that's one less logo we have to defend. So, right now we're in a position where the torch is something we have to defend. We have porcupine do that. I feel like we're growing the list of things we have to be careful of. Ms. Adams.
All right, so I've got a whole list. When we're talking about IP enforcement, I'm going to call bullshit. That we've already kind of had this general agreement that unless somebody's using our branding fraudulently, we're not going after them, number one. Number two, it's a fucking porcupine. This is not a logo. We clearly don't have the market on porcupines. Porcupines all over the country are going to be probably very distressed to hear that we're even implying that we do. Right? So let's let go of that. This is a graphic symbol, graphic representation of an animal. We're not talking about creating, Ted the porcupine. We're talking about a generalized use of porcupine. Before anybody brings up how much money we spent developing this new branding that we all hate, I don't care. Much like the conversation we had concerning the convention, if you're sunk, our branding sucks. Let's own it. Our body and our members love the porcupine. We represent them. They don't work for us. So there's another little throw out there to our members. As far as the media is going to assign us whatever, they will if we don't take a stand now. I would much rather we choose what animal is going to represent us than leave it up to the mainstream media who also suck. I don't know about you. I don't trust them. I think this should be our decision and not theirs. And from a marketing perspective, if we look at our shirts, our bumper stickers, the things that sell well, they are not the things with the chain and the stick. They are indeed the items that contain the porcupine. So we're talking about increasing revenue. We're talking about growing the party. Why would we cut off our nose to spite our
our face and reject the symbol that is our best selling symbol. It just seems ridiculous to me. Again, we're jumping into debate. It's a porcupine.
Ms. Sauer.
This is hilarious. Can I amend the motion to, name the porcupine George Phillies?
Second. Is that, all right, Ms. Howard moves to amend to name the porcupine George Phillies. Seconded by Mr. Nana. Is there objection?
Yes, there is objection.
All right, there is objection, so we will now move into debate on the amendment. I will create a new queue for that. Ms. Sauer, would you like to speak to your amendment?
So we will have to continue.
I can hear you. Only with the consent of the body, so.
I consent.
All right, is there objection to withdrawing the amendment from consideration? All right, without objection. All right, back to the main item, Mr. Coburn.
Just very briefly, I agree with Ken. I don't think that any media outlets are gonna care if we pass this or not. For example, if we've gone ahead with the American Bison, would the media suddenly be, oh, the Libertarian Party is the party of the American Bison? No, that's not how the media operates. So I think that this is just, I think it's just being a little bit too controlling. And we can already run with that branding. We can already use the porcupine, but there are certain things where I just don't think that this body needs to decide.
Time on this item has expired. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people in the queue.
I would move to extend.
Ms. Harlow moves to extend by. Let's finish the motion and then.
I would to extend for 10 minutes.
Ms. Harlow moves to extend by 10 minutes. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Hewitt. Is there objection?
Yes.
There's objection, so we'll have a vote on whether to extend time by 10 minutes. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, raise your hand. Thank you. Any abstentions? A vote of 10 to 4, time is extended 10 minutes. All right, Ms. Harlow, please.
I have a quick, Richard, what are those hand symbols you're making?
Please say yes, no, something else.
Yeah. So just to tell you where we're at, in pros, I've got Harlow, Ross, Hewitt, and then other, I've got Lucia. So that's where we're at. Ms. Harlow.
Okay, just to address some points that I didn't address in my opening. I never suggested we need to do the trademark. The fact is, the porcupine's already out in the wild. We couldn't trademark it if we wanted to. And everyone is so concerned we would need to. I will remind you, we don't have a trademark on the Statue of Liberty, and that is an official representation as well. I think that's just really going into the weeds, and we're acting like a bunch of lawyers, which most of us are not, thank God, and no offense to lawyers. And as far as, oh, we can't say who's going to use what, we're not actually telling anyone they have to use something. We're recognizing reality, what people are already using. And this is just recognizing this is what it is. I actually do think that the media would pay attention to that because they know so little about us. And as to the question, what would they use device and otherwise? No, because that already isn't reality. We're not making new reality here. We're just saying we know this is what's already being used for us. I don't think, I actually would be terrified if the media used the bison because they're all dead. And well, most of them, and I don't think extinction should represent us. We do represent the members. This comes up. They love the porcupine. We're already using it on our shirts and stuff, arguably against our policy manual since it's not the chicken
or the Statue of Liberty, we probably shouldn't be selling little pins with the porcupine or the shirt unless we are going to recognize that this is something that we accept. As far as being too controlling, branding is the one thing we should be controlling about. That's our biggest asset, is our branding. Where this isn't a minutia, actually. It might seem a little cute. I love George Willie's, but this is actually something we need to be proactive on. We need to own our image and our brand. All smart companies do that.
Thank you, Ms. Harms. Mr. Lucchini, then Mr. Hudson.
As a point of information, the Republican Party does have trademarks on the elephant. The Democratic Party does not. On their donkey, they tried and failed in 1974. So if you're going to do this, I'm going to change my prior opinion when we go after trademark because it is so prevalent. We would have to pick a particular representation that hasn't been out in the wild, which goes against the whole marketing thing, right? So if I would like to actually call the question. Can I do that?
Yes. Second.
Mr. Lucchini moves to end debate, and second by Mr. Longstreth. Is there objection? Yes. There is objection, so I will vote on whether to end debate. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. I vote 10 to 3 to 10 to 3 to 3. Debate is ended. So we'll proceed to a vote on the item. Madam Secretary, you call the roll. Is anybody unclear on what we're about to vote on?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll take the one. Sure.
To amend policy manual 2.06, number 2, to add the following language. The porcupine can be used in settings where it is typical for a graphical animal image to be used, such as in election coverages in races in which the Democrats and Republicans, with the Democrats and Republicans in which the donkey and elephant are used for their representation. Anybody unclear on what we're about to vote on? All right, Secretary will call.
Ms. Billieu? Yes. 1 second. Mr. Coburn? No. Ms. Epke? No. Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Hewitt?
Yes.
Ms. Hogarth? No. Mr. Longstreth?
Express abstain.
Mr. Molman?
No.
Mr. Nana?
No.
Mr. Nakayla?
Aye.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rodsett?
Yes.
Ms. Sarwar? Yes. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Lucchini?
Yes.
And the total is 10 yes, 5 no, 1 abstention for the chair.
Yes.
You're voting yes? Okay, so 11, 5, 1.
I vote 11 5 to 1. It's adopted. Next on our business is status of 2020 platform committee report. Ms. Carlos.
Oh, really? Yeah. I think I need to do 10 more items on the agenda. I don't have a motion, but I'm going to maybe eventually, I'm not really sure what our authority is here, but I wanted the committee to think about this and I would like to have some discussions. We didn't get to hear the platform committee report last convention. I would submit, and I know some people will definitely disagree with me, but I'm going to say my opinion that part of that's the fault of the LNC because we wasted that whole first day so that the delegates could repudiate what the LNC did, and that could have been done in 10 minutes. But I have 20-something people who spent 6 months of their life working on a platform committee report. I know we can't say, oh, that report has to be heard or anything like that, but we can make certain recommendations. But I would like to come up with some kind of plan within our authority to at least give those proposals a good shot of being heard next convention.
in order to honor the work of that committee. Or we can even decide that the LNC appointees will remain the same next time. That is something that's within our authority. We can't control who the states. But we can make certain recommendations. And I, as chair of that committee, feel terrible because they worked so hard on those proposals. And I think we always need to try to honor the work of volunteers and not go, oh, too bad, so sad. Particularly when I do think it was our fault. So if the chair would indulge, I'm moving for an informal discussion on this topic.
I'll open up the speakers queue. As Adams, as Mr. Longstreet.
So I fully support allowing the committee to give their presentation in some form. We will use LPTV to do that. I would stand firmly against maintaining the same seated committee, with the understanding that some states absolutely get to make appointments, but there are many states, the majority of them in fact, who don't. And to close off the availability for members from those states to apply to be part of the next platform committee, because we feel like the last committee got slighted, it served no purpose. We're going to select more members because we feel like other members got slighted. That would be okay with me. I would support maybe using LPTV, let's let the platform committee give their report, and then let's move on and see the new committee and try to do better.
Mr. Longstreet and Mr. Hayden.
So I was alternate on the platform committee. We did put a lot of work in. My thoughts are similar to Ms. Adams, although I think there was a bit of misunderstanding. Ms. Harless had suggested maybe the same LNC appointees, not the same state appointees. I disagree with that also. I think that a platform committee should be a platform committee. Now that said, I do think that what this LNC can do is LPTV is a good way to kind of put that stuff out there. I hadn't considered it. But I think the best thing that this committee can do, this LNC can do, is pass that committee report on to the next interim chair when the platform committee starts up, and with the express desire maybe of this committee that is a starting point for that platform committee, a suggested starting point, if you will. And I think that is all that we as a body can do, because that is a convention committee. That's not a committee of this body.
Mr. Hayden.
Actually, I had similar thoughts as Mr. Longstreet had, where it is a bylaws committee that is kind of independent of LNC, but we can make sure we preserve the work that was already done and pass that on to the next platform committee, especially our appointees, of the strong urging that they use that as consider all the suggestions or the proposals that came out of the previous platform committee.
There being no further speakers on this item, we'll conclude it without objection. That concludes new business with previous notice. Next item on the business is closing ceremony for announcements.
Oh, yes. Oh, we did have something we put on the agenda for today, Mr. Chair, was for the poll, and that's what the announcement was. Some folks said they didn't get my poll for choosing the December date. Everyone got it because it was sent to the internal LNC list. I will send it out again. I didn't send it on the public list because it doesn't require registration, and we would have 1,000 people spamming it. But I will resend it again now to the internal list. It's just a link to do a quick poll. One other question point, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. For Ms. Hogarth had that motion to appoint those people by email ballot. Is there a method? Are we using ranked choice approval?
So far, this committee, when it's filled with appointees, we've used a vote and we've used approval voting. Is there any objection to continuing with that for these? Mr. Wallman?
I'd like to ask if there's support for the ranked choice.
That's what I'm asking.
I want ranked choice.
I would then move that we switch to ranked choice.
Okay. Mr. Mullen moves to use instead ranked choice voting. There's a second. Is there objection? There is objection. All right. Well, technically we can debate this now. All right. So Mr. Mullen,
Ranked choice should result in fewer ties. The end.
all right. Ms. Billiard, did you want to speak on this? Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this? Ms. Rowland?
We often, when we've done elections in the past with approval, have difficulty getting a majority, and I don't really want multiple rounds. And just my personal preference, I think ranked choice is superior because it allows you to differentiate between your choices. So I want a clear winner, and I want the data as to who gets preferred. You know, most approval voting does not give you that data.
Chair of the question. How do you do ranked choice for 5 seats?
You rank it, you would eliminate until the top 5, right?
You can rank all your order, all your things. You can imagine the 3 of us in the thing, and we would rank Josh first, me second, Mr. Chief third. Assuming that nobody had a total, whoever had the least number of first place votes is removed from the ballot and then gets totaled again until you have somebody who has over 50%. The number of candidates is irrelevant. It's an instantaneous calculation.
So everybody votes for 1 or they vote for 5?
I go for
You rank your candidates in order. Okay, if you choose not to rank, let's say there's 5 candidates, you rank 1, 2, 3. You're actually the people that you don't rank. You're ranking them 3, 3 as well. So if you don't rank people, they all have the lowest ranking that you gave them. However, you can rank 1 through 5. The only thing that is not permitted is to rank everybody first.
All right. I'm not quite sure I follow, but that is an answer to my question. Ms. Adams.
So the conversation that we all just witnessed is exactly why I don't support ranked choice voting on this right now. 1 round is preferable to me than potentially 10 or 15 when clearly there is not a broad understanding of the process involved.
Mr. Mullen.
So I want to apologize for making an unclear motion if I need to amend or whatever. The way that I've done ranked choice voting in a field race is you eliminate until the number of people to be elected are all that remains. So you just keep eliminating. So if we're electing 5 to a committee, you eliminate until there are 5. With the understanding that I assume we're going to have NOTA involved, anyone who is under NOTA is defeated, and anything under NOTA is a vacancy. Because we have the fun NOTA stuff. I don't know if we're playing with NOTA or not, but.
So I have a further question. So there's 17 voting members of the National Committee.
Yes.
So would this result in a scenario where like you can get elected with 4 yes votes? Rather than only 5?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that answers my question.
Just one clarification, including you have to beat NOTA to win in ranked choice voting. So if there were 4 yes.
I get ranked choice voting for vote for 1. That is totally clear. You can field 1. All right. I appreciate the answer. Ms. Adams.
Point of clarification. We're talking ranked choice voting. Are we talking instant runoff, single transferable vote,
Converse method, what method are we speaking of ranked choice voting? Are we looking at the board account? Are we doing use pass voting? It wasn't stated, so I just like clarification.
Mr. Mullen.
And that was what I was trying to clarify. The method that we would be using would be we eliminate until the number of people to be elected are all that remains, with none of the above being an option. So you have to be order to be elected. So if we want, for instance, electing 5, none of the above counts in third. Well, we've only elected 2, and then there's 3 vacancies. It's annoying, but it does happen. None of the above.
But that is the way you use ranked choice in a field race, is to eliminate until the number to be elected are all that remain. I'm sorry, I use this to run off and ranked choice interchangeably because I don't get into the super weirdo nuanced stuff that doesn't matter 99% of the time. I mean, I've done hand tallies on ranked choice for over a decade. You literally just tally up all number ones and then eliminate the person least. And you just keep doing that over and over until there's the number to be elected or all that remain. So I don't know if that's any particular method. That's just the standard thing. But Chris, you seem to be knowing what I'm trying.
Mr. Lucci.
That's these different.
Right.
Okay.
There are labels for this, and I would take it upon myself and send a primer to the entire LNC on all of these things. You can go down that rabbit hole, but at least you'll have it in front of you. Okay.
Anybody else wishing to speak on this? Mr. Ferraro.
When we were making the nominations, over half the 7 people said, sure, like they may not care. If 2 people wanted to just remove themselves from nomination, that'd be great.
Okay, something, a lesson that I learned when we were using approval voting on this committee when I first started, and I learned this from Ms. Madison. In a small body like this, approval voting is not good, because all someone has to do is figure out if they want to be on the committee, bullet vote themselves. And approval voting is not made for small committees like this. And I can tell you every single time we use approval voting, and it's a committee I want to be on, I only vote for myself because I would be shooting myself in the foot if I don't. If we want actually a consensus candidate where people are not going to bullet vote, then you're dumb if you don't, as far as I'm concerned, if you want the position. Ranked choice is much superior in a small body like this. Even the approval voting advocates will tell you that. They're all in Colorado, so I know, believe me. Hear them for hours.
I would say that's true if there's a majority requirement. But if you, for ranked choice, if there's to get a consensus candidate, if there's a majority requirement. But I asked, if we do this, would it be possible to get elected with 3 or 4 yes votes out of the 17? The answer is yes. 3 or 4 votes for you for the person.
It's some point of a rank.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what you mean by yes.
Yes.
We could always require a majority if that's what the body desires.
There's ways to do that too.
Mr. Moore.
So where things break down in every voting method is when there are more voters than there are choices, right? Because, or excuse me, there are more choices than voters. So say for instance, we had a choice of 20 things, there's only 18 of us voting. That messes everything up. Everything goes weird when the math is flipped up. Obviously in normal elections, you have millions of voters, 3 or 4 candidates, it all works out. As you get closer to that, things being equal is where the weird scenarios come in. I would suggest that what you're asking about is the yes. So in a scenario where we keep eliminating and we end up with 14 ballots that are exhausted because there are no further ranks, is that what you're, okay. I would be in favor of.
Yeah. Someone's brought up, oh, people can gain that. Whatever the election does, people can gain that.
Oh yeah, every election can be gained in some way. Like I said, the real problem is it should be closer when the number of voters equals the number of votes. Things get weird, or the number of candidates. But I would be okay with requiring that on the final ballot that there be some sort of majority, I guess. But I don't want to keep doing this over and over again.
Ms. Adams, what's your point of information?
Policy manual simply says, in regards to this committee, elected by the LNC, it does not require.
My ruling would be that election, the word election implies majority.
I would appeal that, that is an issue.
We'll wait till the results happens. Mr. Nana, I would like to call a question. Question's been called. Is there any objection to ending debate? All right. Mr. Muller? Holman has moved to use ranked choice voting as the election method for selecting the members of the candidate support committee. Is anybody unclear on what we're about to vote on? Here's the candidates on main motion. All those in favor, raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. Any abstentions? By a vote of 13 to 1 to 2, it is not. Back to announcements. All right.
So I will resend that, but we still need to select